Hi there, it's Paulie here with Mr. Snoots. Yay! So we are travelling at the moment, but I left these reviews for you. I have been waiting quite some time for the new miniatures game from Sam Mustafa. Now, Sam Mustafa of Honor Games, I really like his work. He has a talent for taking things that have normally been handled in gaming with masses of charts and tables and way too much detail and way too much depth, and turning them into simple, usable game systems that give you a interesting set of problems in a game. So the gameplay is there, but that are easy to understand, easy to introduce new players to, and give you a great feel from the period. He has done Eisenhower. Now, I did a review a while ago of his World War II naval game, Nimitz, which is excellent. This is World War II land warfare. Now, at the moment, this is specifically for kind of European and Eastern and desert theatres, because everyone shies away from Japanese Pacific stuff. But what the hell? But this is the game of the big picture. You are running an army. So might be running a couple of corps. You can run an army group in this. So this is the game where you could do the Normandy landings. You could do Operation Market Garden. You could do Battle of the Bulge. You can do these things here. The basic maneuver element in it is a battalion. And so if you had, say, a division, well, you're going to have what, 3 or 4 regiments. They might have 3 or 4 battalions in them. So, a division's going to be about 12 or 13 bases of troops. A corps might be like 3 or 4 of those. So, you might get 50 bases of troops for running a equivalent of a Russian army or a German or American corps. That's fine, fantastic. So this game uses a square grid for the battlefield, and you can stack multiple units in a grid. Each of these grids is a couple of miles across, so obviously the battlefield is a little bit abstracted in that we're not interested in small things, even things like small villages. You can have urban areas and so on, but that represents like a couple of miles of urban area. So, that's a city, that's a major town. Open terrain, which is really anything that's not wall-to-wall trees and forest and swamp and so on. There are difficult terrains like swamp and so forth, hills and so forth. Open terrain is anything that's generally open, so that can have lots of villages and small woods and fields and all that sort of stuff in it. Just presumed. That hardly even shows at this scale. But here is the city of Frankfurt, and here is here are the flatlands around it, and here are the swamplands of this river delta over here. Yes, those are important. So the neat thing about this is that you get that big picture. So you're actually running an army, and as such, the problems you're facing are the ones that face people running armies. We're not worried about the individual scraps of mere companies and so on. This is battalion versus battalion, division against division, and in many ways, this is the he who organised their supplies best will win. So there are points values for troops, but in essence, what they've said is there is infantry and there is armour. Artillery and air power is abstracted. We don't need to use it specifically as bases on the ground. The artwork in the game, for some reason, has shown a lot of these playtesting units, which are Australian actually. Seems to be the Wollongong Games Club has done a lot of these. They have been using like 15mm troops and so on. I would say that's obviously because they've got them from playing other games. To my eye, when I look at these are beautifully made for using with 6mm troops, or God help us, even 2mm troops would work really well. But a base is going to be like, whatever you need to represent whatever it is. They can be an armoured battalion, they can be an infantry battalion. Now, the armour could be superior armour for the year in which it is deployed. So, for instance, if you're playing 1943, 44, 45, and you have a battalion of Tiger tanks, you've got the 501st Schweres Panzerabteilung, okay, that is Tiger 1s, so that is a superior tank, so you can have that. Your infantry, they can be foot. You can have them motorized, which means they have truck or soft vehicle transport. They can be mechanized, which means they have essentially half-track or kangaroo transport. For those who aren't World War II fans, kangaroos are turretless tanks. The British converted a lot of tanks, usually slightly obsolete ones like the Canadian Ram tanks, or a lot of Stuarts actually, and took the turrets off and used them as infantry transports. Great. So you can do this. You also rate groups. They can be regular troops, they can be veterans, in which case they are a bit more efficient, or they can be conscripts, and the effects of conscripts differs from army to army and period to period. There's a little set of army lists at the back which will fill you in on this. A battalion will also have marked on it in its army lists what artillery comes with it. They come with like integral artillery. And your army, your corps, will also have its core artillery assets. So what you can do is, during a turn, you can use the artillery from within a division and the artillery from within a battalion. And once a turn, you can utilize this power. You've also got core artillery you can bring in to bolster it up, but these are just dice that you have. You don't need models or bases. Same goes for air power. Air power is a number of dice that you'll use. So the guys on the ground are the guys actually fighting on the ground. So it's like as you can see, so it's quite abstracted, but it's very well done. You're just rolling d6s to cause hits on people. When a unit is hit, units can be in pristine condition. They can take a level of damage, in which case they become worn. And if a worn unit takes damage, it becomes exhausted. Exhausted units attack really, really badly. So a normal unit will hit on like a 4, 5, or 6. If it's exhausted, it's going to hit on a 6 if it goes into the attack. Once a unit is worn, it will only be hitting on a 5 or 6 rather than a 4, 5, or 6. Veterans will get an extra +1 on their dice, and so on. There are some modifications to this. So what you can do is you can, when it is your turn, you can obviously move units. The mechanized stuff can chortle along at a fair pace. When it's in sort of reach of the enemy, the actual motorized stuff starts slowing down once you get into the action area, but it's great for moving things around in a grand hurry. Armour usually moves about 2 spaces, infantry moves about 1 space. You attack someone by trying to move into their space, and then what you start doing is you're rolling artillery dice to try and cause casualties on them. And but one of the things you can do is you can prepare a unit, which means either digging in, making anti-tank defences, making berms to drive tanks up onto to fire from hull down, all that kind of thing. You can spend activities in essentially digging a unit in, but the moment that unit moves, it loses its preparation. There are linear features, obviously, like rivers and so forth, and there are rules for bridges and that sort of thing. It is quite difficult to attack across a bridge. You will get negatives to hit, etc. As you start looking at what seems to be a deceptively simple set of rules, you begin to realise that The things that are important in this are resource management, and there are 2 or 3 layers of resource. The first one are the troops themselves. As you move guys into the attack, or as you use them to fend off attack, they will become worn very quickly. And when they become worn, they become less effective. And once they become worn, it's very quick that they'll become exhausted. And exhausted troops that are hit, scattered to the winds, they're gone. So, you are going to need to have fresh troops to leapfrog into these guys' zones and try and always have fresh troops holding the line or fresh troops spearheading the attack. So, having immediate ready reserves at the points where you think you're going to get the most action is going to be important, and having things like motorized reserves that can take advantage of extra movement when they're outside of a bit of engagement area with the enemy, that's going to be vital too, because you're going to want to figure out where the enemy is actually concentrating and coming in and start moving these reserves so that you can leapfrog them through, so that your enemy is always facing fresh troops. Now in the game, one of you will always have the strategic initiative, because in the world of real battles there aren't meeting engagements where titanic armies smack into each other. Someone has always decided to initiate an attack, so those guys have the strategic initiative, and that player will be moving first, and that guy will usually have more resources than the defender. Now, one of the things that you also get are actually resources. You get a counters of resources, petrol, oil, lubricants, ammunition, etc. You can burn these points of resources for extra things, and there's a whole list of things that you can do. You can use these things for all manner of things. Now, the actual battle moves in days. Battles can take many, many days. Days have a number of turns, like I think it's 4 turns, and then they go to a night phase. In the night phase, you can reorganize things and do things. So you can attempt to repair troops that have become exhausted or worn. You can attempt, so basically you're bringing repair crews out, dragging off damaged panzers and getting them to the workshops, bringing up spare crews, all this sort of thing, phoning up Repple Dapple and saying, hey, we need more warm bodies, all that sort of thing. Yeah, doing it all. So this manifests itself by using these resource units to be able to essentially heal units that you've had damage. You can also use resource units to do a number of other things, like extra moves, re-rolls on dice. It becomes a thing that you're going to have to use carefully and figure out how you are utilizing this currency in the game. You might also want, because these things are going to take days, you might want to have reinforcements that aren't even on the table at all. You might say, right, I'm a corps of 4 divisions. Okay, one of these is an elite division. I have I have a Soviet Guards division, and I have the strategic offensive initiative. So I am not leading with those at all. The ordinary guys are doing the attack. On day 2, that's when my guards are going to come on the table. Once we've felt out the enemy positions and looked for weaknesses, that's where we reinforce success. And so you can even plan to have entire units come on, at later dates. You can also do things like purchase essentially cards for yourself. You will get a number of these. Often a scenario will give them to you, or you can, if you're using points values, you can buy them, and your army list will have the cards that you can purchase for your army depending on the year in the theatre. But they are things like you can purchase airstrike abilities, you can purchase barrage abilities, you can decide to have extra engineering prep, you might pre-book airdrops. All these sorts of things are pre-done as cards that you use, and you can reuse these cards. Each day you get to use the cards that you have booked as an integral part of your army. So it is interesting as you look at it. So things like engineers and reconnaissance troops and small support groups and so on, they are just within these large battalions doing their thing. Their presence is assumed, and the fact that they are doing their job is just a part of that unit moving and firing in its normal way. So there are no separate counters for, engineers and recce and all this sort of stuff. This is going on integrally in these units and in the areas around them. Your units extend like a zone of control around them, so that does stop people kind of moving through zones of control, because you can spot artillery into nearby hexes and all this sort of thing, so you can't just slip past each other. But there's some interesting rules for isolated troops. Because it is that bigger scale, what you have to watch out for is kind of plunging too deeply into enemy territory and not being able to trace a proper line of supply to a unit, because that zone of control of enemies can extend one square around it, and it might cut you off if you move too deep into the territory. Zone of controls from enemy guys can cut you off. You become isolated, and isolated units get negatives to their attacks, and during the night phase, isolated units can wither away and die. There are some cards that you can get that mean your guys survive without that. So like British, obviously a great idea if you're doing things like British Airborne, or if you've decided you're a stubborn German unit or something, you can resist it a bit, but in essence, don't get cut off from your supply routes. Don't become isolated. That's one of the prime things that you're watching out for. And so I've really enjoyed seeing this. They've got a series of army lists at the back that give you sample organisations. So it covers the entire war. So here's what British armour looks like in 1939 and 1940. Here's how it starts developing in 41 and 42 in the desert. Here's how they reorganise themselves in 44 for the European campaign, etc. The German stuff's kind of interesting. It treats the Germans actually with the some of the contempt they deserve, because the organisations that you will see written up for Germans are total bollocks. The Germans never got their organisation down right. Every Panzer division was a unique beast of its own. They had variable numbers of regiments of variable types, each with variable battalions in them. So they're a lot more amorphous to build German units, because it's like, how long's a piece of string? You can have a tank. You can have a tank that's got no tanks in it. There's some really interesting little extras in it. So it's like within the say the American Army, you can designate some armoured units as tank destroyers, and they are largely built of M10s, M18s, M36s, and yes, the Germans have Panzerjägers, they have those, but they're not deployed doctrinally the way American tank destroyers are. Specific groups who work with integral infantry and integral scouts and integral towed artillery and so on to deliberately draw enemies into traps where their armour can be defeated. So the tank destroyer groups, they get a bonus in prepared defence against armour. Not so good in out-and-out attack, but these are the guys you're going to use to hold the line. And again, if you've got, you can have like one of these units that's going to be equipped with M36s, so that's a superior tank destroyer battalion. In the 43 phase, units in the German army that have Panther Tanks do not count as special armour, because yes, the Panther's got a damn fine 70mm gun, 75mm gun, and 120mm sloped armour, but the transmission is a mindless POS, and these things will catch fire in a nanosecond as soon as you basically put your foot to the pedal. So it just counts as an ordinary tank in this bigger picture, because you've got so many mechanical breakdowns as balancing down the superiority of the tank. But in 44, when those flaws have been worked out, now your Panzer 5 battalions, they are now a superior tank, and they get a bonus. So, you get infantry tanks, which is defined as armour specifically designed for supporting infantry, usually with highly destructive shorter ranged weapons. So British armour can be declared to be infantry tanks, and if you have infantry tanks supporting British or supporting your own infantry, it gives them a major bonus. They're actually very useful. The Russians also have infantry tanks. Some of the ISU 152s and that sort of thing that are classed those units, and I think the SU 76s and so forth, I think they're being classed as infantry support vehicles. So heavy firepower, not really designed as armour crackers at all. And in the case of the British infantry tanks, if you're playing 1944, these are Churchill crocodiles and Churchill petards and AVREs and so on supporting your infantry. So yeah, there's some really interesting. Everyone's got something going for them. Everything's got their own thing. Cavalry are remarkably useful because you get extra movement, but you can do it in very rough terrain like woods and so on, which your motorised stuff can't. So it doesn't go as fast as the motorised, but it's way better than being on foot, and it can do it through forests. So again, for British and Americans invading France, completely useless. For Russian troops moving into areas where there's masses of forests and so forth, a cavalry division's not a bad idea. Infantry on horseback supported with lots of armour is like, ooh, yeah, that'll do it. You get the big picture. So when you play a battle of this, you will see the armour is going to be looking for that open terrain, because that's where it gets its movement and that's where it gets its bonuses. That armour is going to be trying to push through the more open terrain and just punch clean through. You're going to have infantry there to move forward, to occupy those towns and fight for them, to get through the rough terrain, to command areas where you can then start utilising the ability to cut off the other guy's supply lines and so forth. You're going to want to pick the cards that you've done quite carefully. Airstrikes are relatively sort of pinpoint, so you can rain a lot of dice down on very sort of specific targets and areas. Barrage is a bit more indiscriminate. You've gotten like army level artillery assets are supporting your attack. They give you a lot of dice that you can shower around the place. So okay, all good fun. You decide. Do you want to push forward with the Soviet armor backed by massive barrages? Do you want to be American troops going forward under the air umbrella? Having the fighter bombers just literally sweep the road, boys, sweep the road. Good. I think this gives you a thoughtful battle. You have to plan those assets. You've got your actual kind of your resources counters. You've got to plan how you're going to use them. The troops themselves, you are going to want to attack in depth, and you are going to want to defend in depth, and you are going to want to split yourself between offense and prepared defense to give yourself something to fall back on if things aren't going well. If you're attacking, you're going to want to have those immediate reserves near the front to cycle through very quickly on the board, but you're going to want to have mobile reserves. You're going to have to maybe keep part of your force away, perfectly happy to have it like 10 miles in the back and ready to bring it up on the roads for a dawn attack tomorrow morning. It really is the big picture, and I like that. This is the game of running a battle. There are objectives appear sort of on the board, which you head for. This gets you things. These objectives do change as the game plays. At night, the objectives can shift around a bit as new orders come in from OKW or the Allied Command has one too many drinks and decide, wait, no, we're going for Leipzig, boys. So, so you have to sort of keep on your toes a little bit. This is a good game. Sam's done a good job. Like I said, this could be played just with whatever World War II troops you have hanging around. Easy peasy. So to represent armour, you could just use a model tank, and that's what the playtest groups did. You can see they've just used, like, a model tank is an armoured unit, and a stand of infantry from, one of their other games, that's an infantry battalion. But you could take, like, something, if you've got, say 75 mil or thereabout squares, you can have bases, and you could have half a dozen or 8 or 9 tanks and vehicles on them with a couple of half tracks coming up behind. That's your Armour Battalion. Here's your Infantry Battalion. Okay, a couple of rows of infantry finding their way forwards with a couple of armoured vehicles in the back, or a couple of trucks. And this would give you that more panoramic feel that I think these rules deserve. And there is some good 2mm stuff, oddly enough, for World War II, which I'd often wondered what you would use it for, and the answer is you would use it for this. Again, to get that panoramic view of battle. So, yeah, this is a good set of rules. I'm really looking forward to doing some campaigning and so on of this. They've got a number of scenarios in here. They've got rules for doing kind of club tournaments, and there's rules for how to do amphibious landings. There's rules for minefields and so on. It's all done simply and gives you that big picture. So minefields aren't impassable barriers. It's like, this thing's going to start dragging initiative out of me as I move through it. It's going to take me extra points to move through this, and I'll get mired in. Take the long way around or bull through. Those are the command decisions you're going to be asked to make. It's great work, and I think it gives an excellent game. Hats off to Sam. Again, you've taken a series of things that could have been expressed with 400 million charts and tables, and instead have made it into a cool set of resource management and some very understandable dice rolls. Not an expensive game to set up for, is the other thing I like. Any of those options, just using a couple of plastic tanks or the 6mm or the 2mm, it's not going to break the bank. You could make a whole core and it's going to cost you like somewhere between 20 and 80 bucks tops. So this would be my choice for doing campaigny gaming. And unlike so much out there, which is always just 1944. No, if you want to do, if you actually want to do Operation Barbarossa, if you really want to see what German tank divisions outfitted with your Panzer IIs are like up against BTs and KV1s, you can give it a shot. Here's what it looks like, boys. So yeah, it gives you some great stuff. I reckon these would be great for doing Western Desert too. That would be fun. Anywho, take a look. They're on the Honor website. Sam is a great guy. Look at everything else that he's got up there. Like I said, I've done reviews of Nimitz, which is a great game. He's got some great stuff up there. I'm really looking forward to seeing more from him. Anyway, cheers everybody. We shall keep exploring far-off places and look after yourselves, and we will attempt to look after ourselves. I'll face it, we're having a good time. Bye!